Welcome back to our Fast Track series with Fabian Robinson. Now it is time to move on. By now, your puppy should be understanding how to follow source in a straight line, overshoot source, and come back to source using their backup skill you taught them. In this next episode, your puppy will learn how to follow direct source by integrating change of direction of source. He will learn how to self-submit to articles, and he will start his methodical footstep behavior. By the end of this video, you will have enough information to teach your puppy all of the necessary behaviors and skills to advance onto tracking. You have taught them what to track and how to track. Now sit back and relax and enjoy the video.
This is the thing with these also, is when I'm laying these, you don't have to have a balancing act. You just put you can actually lay them and then go to where you lay them, because the puppy doesn't understand its footsteps or anything or any other scent but what's on with the food, so that's what they're going to motivate on. So if you stay out here and just then go back and place your food in a nice row for them, it just makes it easier for you to be able to do this. You can lay all your tracks first and then go back and just place your food in the proper place. That way you're not trying to play a balancing act, trying to set food while you're doing this. It makes it much easier for you. You then lay these tracks very quickly and actually be able to place your food exactly where you need to place them in a nice straight line, one right after the other, so the puppy keeps momentum moving forward. Because remember, this line is about forward motion to get them to the end of the source so they can learn what scent discrimination is. Scent discrimination meaning a scent different from another. That makes it really easy so you don't have to play a balancing act.
Lay the first leg the same as you did before. Drag a line about 3 foot long. For the turn, place your heel 90 degrees, 1 footstep length from the end of your first leg. Take a large step and drag back to where it joins the first leg. Make 6 to 8 individual turns that change direction. When you go back to place your food, bait the first leg as before, 2 to 3 inches apart all the way to the end. Do not put any food in the turn for about 12 to 18 inches, then put a few pieces of food 2 to 3 inches apart to the end. When the dog comes to the end of the first leg, he will overshoot, then back up, expecting a reward. You will hold him here and let him sniff around. He may get confused a little because he's expecting food. This is normal. He will soon discover the dragged line that makes the turn, which is direct source, has a familiar smell. He will then follow it to find a reward waiting for him. This is where the true connection happens, where the dog begins to understand direct source. Also, where the percentage of the direct source becomes higher value. Let him get to the end and overshoot. Here is where you can reward the backup as you did before with the straight line. Once you see the puppy is making turns on his own, then you will move to the next step, which we will demonstrate next.
Okay, so now we're going to have the puppy prepared to go up there with everything in the right place before I get there, so I can just get him going. I know he's already got that drive to want to go. So you see he just submitted to the end of the source. So now I know he understands the clarity of staying on source. So now I'm going to take him to the next ones are going to be where he's going to change direction. If you see you're having trouble pulling your puppy away or your dog away, don't fight with them here and discourage them. Just get some food in your hand and encourage them to go to the next start. Get yourself all prepared. And then you give him the little hop forward. Now at this time, because he's pulling me forward, I'm going to start giving little pops on the leash. Now here's where he makes a decision to follow source. And there it is. And that's one of the reasons why you don't want to stay too long on him staying on source. He needs to learn how to follow it, because you see what he just did there. This is the first time he had to go follow source and he didn't know how to leave it. So before it becomes a bad habit for him to be able to follow that scent, you have to get on to making him be able to follow it instead of identifying it. Yeah, that one was much easier for him. Now I'm going to be a little bit more diligent with him, with little pops here, for him to identify all the pieces of food now, because he's got the desire to want to go. So I'm going to stop him at every piece of food and make sure he's responsible now. And I don't let him stay there anymore at any length of time, because I don't want that to become a habit. So now we have to start teaching him articles, so he has a means to an end to stop now and lay down an article, because now he understands scent discrimination, he understands how to follow scent. Now he's going to learn to be responsible for what's in front of him, meaning the food on the straight line, so he can pick them up, try to control his speed a little bit, teaching him his have-tos. If you just seen there, when he picked his head up, I gave him a pop forward. That pop forward was his have-to, and we create that in the very beginning with them, so they know when they get that pop, they can put their head back down and go back to work. Even young puppies at this age can understand that concept.
Once your puppy shows the behaviors you want in your individual turn lines, you will gradually increase your number of turns. You will then lay one track with 7 or 8 turns in it. You are looking for consistency of the behavior, which is leaving source, coming back to source, and taking source without food. You will bait each leg the same. Some food to get started in the first leg to the end, then no food at the turns, a few pieces at the end of each leg to reward them for taking pure, direct source, and so on. At the very end, you will reward the backup, but only for a short time. It is time to teach them to submit to articles. Remember, this is a fast-moving program. Rewarding the end of the track with food no longer has any value.
We're going to use this energy that the puppy's showing us with the enthusiasm to want to go do his job.
It is normal for puppies or young dogs to try to quit if they get confused. This is why we taught them to go forward with the motivated pops forward. Don't panic them or talk to them. Wait them out and help them get back to work. You can see here, once he figured out his job, he was able to go back to work happily without any interference from the handler. At this stage, it is important to note that we have not named any commands. We are using motivated direction with guidance of the leash. The pops forward are giving the puppy direction with a feeling that is connected to something positive. We call this motivated stimulation or direction, which later can be used as a correction or a have-to without shutting them down when they veer from the correct behavior. This can be used later on as a bridge for motivated stimulation with the e-collar. When they can respond to motivated direction, then we add the command. A word without direction has no value. A word with direction has clarity.
How awesome was that? That was good. And now you notice it's on the live pinch now. It's not shutting him down or anything. And when you see that spot there where he stopped, I just allowed him to work it out for himself to realize that racing through this is not the best solution. And I'm clarifying that there's stuff there for you so you can slow down a little bit and look for it. But this is the attitude you're looking for with the puppy. See how he's still anxious to want to go to work? This is you want the addiction. You want to set the addiction. That's why the control right now is not the big concern right now. We want that drive. We're trying to build a big cushion, so when we start putting the discipline control through, we have such a big cushion that you're not even going to see any of the discipline when it's all said and done, because we're creating such a good cushion of drive. Okay, so as you can see in the beginning stages, once they understand their backup skill, understand the difference about source indication, where they understand when they're off source and when they're on source. Then we move on from that point. We never want to stay someplace too long to develop that, for that to become the habit, because tracking is not about lines, it's about creating behaviors. So we want to be able to teach a dog the behavior in the fastest and easiest way possible, so we make it very easy for them to learn a behavior. We don't want to complicate this. One of the reasons why we don't start in the beginning stages with footstep is because the puppy or dog, when they're just starting out with this, and if they have a lot of food drive, they're going to be very frustrated and they're not going to be thinking. So you don't want to discourage, and you don't want to teach them how to just mow down the track and just skip a bunch of food. That's not the point of this. Okay, so the point of this is to get them to understand scent discrimination. So that's what these lines are all about. So once they do the lines and we understand that they can stay on the source and they don't leave and they submit to source, then we say, okay, that process is done. We don't need to do that anymore. Now we have to move on and teach them how to follow source, because if you stay here too long, this becomes the job. And and what happens, it becomes a bad habit now, because now the dog cannot move on. Because when you try to make them move on, you've already created such a strong habit of them staying within source and submitting to source. The key is for them to submit to source so they understand source. After that point, now we have to teach them how to follow it. So as soon as they indicate that they understand how to stay on source and learn their backup skills, we move on. So the moving on part now is teaching them how to take source. So you see the puppy when they came back here, he sniffed around, he was a little confused, and all of a sudden something familiar struck his nose right here. Something familiar that he smelled, that we didn't even realize that within this scent here, he was actually, even though he was picking up food, and food is probably in the beginning stage 80% of the source that they're actually following right now, that 20% is still in there. So so when he comes up here and he comes back and there's no food here but just the smell, and he smells something that smells familiar going that way, he takes a chance and maybe it goes this way, and all of a sudden he was right and he gets rewarded for it. So now we're changing the percentage. Now we're saying, okay, it's not about the food, it's about following source, and source leads me to the food. So that's the number one thing that we want to create. We want to create very early on, so we can take food up very early on. Because tracking is not about food. If your dog is eating food off the track, he's not tracking. Okay, food is basically it's a manipulated tool to form behaviors. So now we have him following source, but we want to make sure he's consistent. So if you watch this, it goes here, here, he does his backup skill, he goes, he finds it, he follows it. He does his backup skill, he goes, he finds, he follows, and the whole time there's no food in this process right here. When he comes back to complete source. He finds source, he follows source, and then he gets rewarded. The source rewards him, not the food anymore. Okay, so now we're taking the percentage and changing it. Now we're taking the percentage now and going, now it's 80% source, 20% food. And that's the key to this is limit the dependability of food, and get them more interested in following source, which is crushed vegetation, disturbance of the earth. Okay, so you see how many lines we've made, and the reason why we do so many of these is we want to make sure, we can't be 100% sure if we do like just 2 or 3 lines and he does them okay. We want to make sure the behavior is so solid that he can do all of these the exact same way. Okay, and have the same behavior on every single one of them. And then we say once he has the condition of this has no longer any value. Now this becomes a bad habit. We don't want to stay here too long, because now tracking, again, is not about backing up and trying to find lines. It's just to create that the dog can understand how to follow source. Okay, and so we make it very easy for them to understand that job. So once they understand this principle, then we're going to go right to the footsteps.
The end.
now, here's where the food is the manipulator. This is where the food comes in very handy, because now we want to teach the dog that was what to track. This here is how to track it. Okay, so we're creating the behavior. Okay, this is what we're teaching, what we want the dogs to learn, how to track direct source, not overall source. Direct source, the reason for why direct source is so important, because direct source never moves. So if you have a windy day, or if it's raining, or whatever the situation is, that direct source will never move out of that spot. Overall source, the wind has effect on moving it. Okay, so let me explain the difference between overall source. When the dog is just going, skimming across the ground like this, he's tracking overall source. That means he's tracking all of this. When he's methodical and tracking direct source, that means he's putting his nose here, 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 here. Exactly where the actual crushed vegetation, disturbance of earth is. So where I step here, that area, in this area right here where I step, where I made a footprint, cannot leave the ground. The only way this can leave the ground is if I dig it out and move it. Other than that, it stays there. That's direct source, and that's what you want to make your dog very good at tracking and understanding direct source, because they cannot get in any trouble when they understand direct source. All right, so now we're on footsteps. So now food's in every footstep. So my job now is to direct the puppy or dog in every footstep, developing the behavior and the habit, making every footstep the same value. Okay, so, and now the key here now is when they go to the last footstep, this is where I still keep the line in place, because I want them to also learn how to take source still. Because now, remember, we're adding back the percentage of food. So because we're adding back a percentage of food, we also have to keep that percentage of just source in their brain as well, and how to find it. So when it changes direction and they'll follow the source, now we'll find the reward to following the source. And we do that consistently until we see the behavior form here. As soon as we start seeing the methodical behavior start forming, this line becomes shorter and shorter and shorter, and they actually turn into footsteps. So now we've taught the puppy or the dog how to back up, follow source. Now we're going to teach them how to take a turn. Because now we were teaching them how to lose a turn, how to stay on source. Now we're going to teach them how to take a turn. So this is where now the food is going to be around every footstep. And you're going to do two different types of tracks with the dogs at this point. One is going to be for them learning how to take a turn. The other one is for them learning how to hunt. Okay, and that's where as soon as they start learning to be methodical, you're going to start picking food up right away. Okay, as soon as they can go to footstep by themselves, food has to come up. You have to turn it into a hunt. But you can't turn it into a hunt all the time. It has to be where the dog, they're still learning that behavior, methodical behavior, and also you have to teach them how to take turns. With all these little exercises, you can't forget about actually teaching them the job. The job is hunting. The job is not eating food off the ground. The job is hunting. Okay, that's the number one thing. Teach your dog how to hunt. The better they can hunt and the longer they can hunt for, the more successful tracking dogs they're going to make. Okay, so we want the puppy to relax a little bit. We're going to start the article process. So we're going to hold the article, the food's underneath the article. We're going to guide the puppy down, and then open your hand and give him the food. Right now it's just about the motion of going down, and I'm helping him down by pressing down on his shoulders. So the food is underneath the article. I show it to him, and I go down, and I open it. Okay, so as soon as I have that behavior, where the puppy or dog is going down on just the motion of it, and I'm gonna step up the ante a little bit. Just like that. So he's going down really easy now. So now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have the article here, put the article down, he goes down to the article, and I feed him. In the beginning with puppies, they're probably gonna wanna play with the article, but don't make a big deal out of it, just offer them the food instead. Because they're going to realize that the article has no value by itself. So again, now it's just about the article and then rewarding with the food. so once I have this behavior now I'm going to step it up because now I want him to actually show me that it's the article that's rewarding him, that doing the behavior towards the article is what's going to reward him with the food. So as he goes down now, I'm going to reward him for that. Okay, and then see what I'm going to do is I'm going to just wave my hand out. When he shows me any indication of the article, yes, good. I'm going to start rewarding any new behavior towards the article now. Yes, just like that. Yes. Okay, so now, because I want to make sure that the puppy clearly understands that it's laying down and submitting to the article or whatever material you're using that gets them the reward. So what we ask them to do is to unlock the bowl with the food to a behavior. So you already got them going down, you reward them for that behavior. Okay, so now we have there we go. We just touched it again, and we reward the little touches now. Yes, good. Any indication towards the article I'm going to reward him for right now, because he still does not have a rhyme or reason why he's doing the behavior, but he's going to pick it up very quickly. I'm going to make sure I put the article clear there. It's good. Yes, good. Remember, this is the first time this puppy's ever doing this behavior, understand anything. He's already halfway there. Good. Yes, good. Good. Even though he touched it with his mouth, I'm going to reward him because he showed me some kind of indication that he's interested in the article. So now, what I'm going to do now is as he goes down to the article, I'm not going to reward that anymore. I'm going to reward him showing me the behavior right away to the article. Yes, good. Just like that. Yes, good. Yes, good. There it is. Okay? And now once I have that behavior set in stone, I'm going to stop doing it because I don't want the dog or the puppy to develop a bad habit of touching the article. We do that in the beginning stage so we understand that we've taught the dog or the puppy what the job was, what they're submitting for. And once they understand that behavior, then we take that behavior away and then just reward them for submitting to the article, not touching it anymore. But you got to do that immediately before it becomes a habit. Okay, so we started the articles with this one. He was learning to lay down with help. Now we're asking him to point out the article to us. Make sure they're nice and calm before you do this, where they're sitting, so they're thinking. They're not all over the place. Show them the article. So any behavior he shows you regarding the article, even if he touches it with his foot, it's an indication that he understands that's the thing that's rewarding him. Just like that. And like I said, I'll probably do that just one more time where he's touching it, and then start letting him just submit to the article without touching, just rewarding him for laying down, not touching the article, because I don't want that to become a habit later on for him. But it's for us for us as handlers to know that what we're teaching the dog understands. Okay, so it's when the dog gives us a clear indication that this piece of material is what's rewarding me. When I point to it, I get something for it. Gives us the understanding that the dog understands why it's laying down.
Nice. This is a Psy, 14 weeks old, second footstep session.
teaching articles, this is why we start with a straight leg again. So it makes it very easy for him to follow something he's used to, because the job right now is not so much source, it's about the articles. So we want him to get him to the articles as fast as possible so we can teach him the behavior. Okay, so we give him something that he's used to. We don't put the articles to footsteps yet because he's just learning footsteps. That's two things he has to learn. So we break it up and teach him individually so he understands one behavior at a time. Even though he's doing it within the same track, it's a completely different behavior and a different process. So once I stopped with the footsteps, he made that turn. He came up to a straight line, which he's used to following straight lines. Now he has to get used to connecting the dots. The dots are for the articles is what I'm doing there in the beginning with him, having him self-submit, teaching him how to self-submit to the articles, and then teaching him how to lay down on the articles with help here. Those two pieces are going to come together within 1 or 2 sessions. And he's going to know now when he comes to an article and he submits to it, he gets rewarded. Because he already showed me the behavior, he understands that the article is something good. Okay, because he's giving me the touches with his nose and pointing to it and clarifying to me, I understand that this piece of material means something that's going to benefit me when I'm in this position. Still working on methodical behavior where it's footstep to footstep tracking food in every footstep. Okay, I want to develop habit of footstep to footstep tracking, because the more habit is formed on methodical footstep tracking, direct source, the better and more responsible and the more dependable the dog will become as a good tracking dog. Okay, so still doing the same things when I come up to the turns. He goes into footstep to footstep into a slight drag. This drag again has no food in it because it's all source. Back into footsteps. Okay, so every turn I'm taking advantage of keeping my source, pure source, alive after footstep, because footsteps have food in every footstep, so the dog is really not tracking. All they're doing is eating food off the ground, but what they are doing is developing the behavior that I want them to learn for tracking. Okay, that pattern never changes. It's always footstep to footstep. So the better they get at following that pattern, the more dependable they will become. So, but I still also want them to not lose touch of complete pure source, direct pure source. And that's why I'm taking advantage of these turns, that these drags are into just pure source with no food in them whatsoever. So they still have that imprint of source, and back into footstep to footstep to footstep, and so on. Okay, now here on the second track that I did, we started with the footsteps, but as soon as I make my first turn, I go into a continuous drag into articles. Because now I want my dogs to learn how to lay down on articles, how to submit to them, and how to restart off of them. So I make that process really clear in a straight line because this is not really about tracking per se or following a pattern. This is just about being able to identify an article and being able to understand the job when they reach that article to submit to it. Okay, so that's why I do a line of these in a row. That way I'm able to control the whole situation here to each article in a straight line, so they don't have to worry about going the footsteps right now. They just can follow a straight line to an article, a straight line to an article, a straight line to an article. It just makes them easy to identify. That's the job we're working on now. This piece of material rewards me. When I get to it and I submit to it, it rewards me. And that's why you see me asking the dog to point it out. So he keeps clarifying to me, this is what I'm doing, this is what's rewarding me. When I show this behavior rewards me with this piece of material. Okay? And this is probably the second time this puppy is doing this behavior. The first time with this many articles, I would probably say within the next day or two it's submitting to the articles. I always give it a chance. I don't force the issue. You see me bring the dog up to it. As soon as the nose identifies the article, I'll give him a little touch, give him a chance to respond to a little touch, and then the process starts. When he submits, he shows me what he submitted to, and I reward him for it. And each time I give him the opportunity to submit by himself, I bring him to it, and I give him an opportunity, I just give him a little touch. I'm not slamming him down yet because eventually this will become a have to. But right now, I'm teaching the behavior and I want him to submit to it himself and understand, oh, this piece of material rewards me. When I submit to it, rewards me. Once he shows me that behavior consistently, that he's willing to, that he understands the job, then it becomes a job where it's a have to now. Now you have to lay down the article right now. So there's no more that I'm going to help you anymore. Okay? But in the beginning, it's always help because you're still teaching. There's never a correction in the process of teaching. And even though the process of what you see me doing by placing and guiding down, that's actually the have to later on because he's familiar with that. Okay, so now I put some firmness to that, and he doesn't stress out by it because he understands that's how he was learned to do that behavior.
While you are watching the progression of these next tracks, I want to address an issue we see mainly with green handlers. Teaching a young dog to track has a lot to do with feeling and timing. If you really pay attention to your dog, he will tell you what he needs to train him properly. It is also imperative to make sure you are giving them the correct information. We get asked all of the time, when is it time to move forward? We always say, listen to your dog. If you give your dog the correct information, you will be able to feel when he is ready for advancement. One example is when you first start the tracking process, in the beginning there's a lot of guidance and help from you as the handler. When they understand the behaviors you're trying to teach them, your guidance becomes less needed. Natural feel is very hard to teach, but it can be developed with lots of practice. I will describe feel to you in this example. When you get to footsteps, you have a line in each hand. The pattern is left to right. It never changes. You simply guide the dog by squeezing left to help the dog put his nose in the left footstep and squeeze right to put his nose in the right footstep. If you do this with a rhythm, the dog eventually starts doing this on his own. Here is where you lighten your touch. You gradually disappear from the picture, and before you know it, the dog is doing the methodical behavior on his own. Many handlers get stuck on one behavior, which then becomes a bad habit. The reason this program moves so quickly is because we make it easy for the dog to understand what we want from them.
All right, so we did 2 tracks again with this puppy. He hasn't been tracking very long. We're just teaching the behaviors of tracking right now and all the rules of it. I mean, this was just a footstep to footstep track, food in every footstep. Again, the same process when we come to the turns. It's a drag, complete only source. Then he takes that with complete source, and then so on and so forth. So it's consistent throughout of the same pattern because we're developing habit of a behavior right now. So it's still food in every footstep, and we come to the end of one of the drags here, and we do that line, the drag, and he stops the article. So now we go, the second track is basically the same as the first, but the footsteps aren't as long. It's just to get him conditioned on following footsteps and still being methodical when he leaves a track, when he leaves the beginning of the track. And then we put it into a complete drag all the way down for him, where now these drags are an article track where he's just concentrating on laying down and restarting off articles. So that's our goal for this leg here. When he got a little bit distracted, I made him get right back to work again. I didn't make a big deal out of it. That's what the have to is all about. That's why in the beginning stages I give those little pops to clarify that means put your nose in the ground and find something. Okay, so the foundation is created that way for these little reasons here in the beginning stages when they are distracted. At this time there was just a little frog running through the track, and he was interested in what the movement of it. But the job is, when you start this process, you see it through. There is no stopping, there's no distraction. So right away we clarify have-tos and clarify the rules. Okay, and you can see he accepted the rules very clearly. He accepted those little pops I gave him, went right back to work, and forgot about the distraction. And that's what the whole goal of that is. All right. Now you see on this leg here. Now he's showing me on one of these, he actually did it on his own. So now he's showing me, once I start seeing consistency of him actually submitting to the article on his own, I'm gonna make, and if you saw the setup with the articles, that he's dropping on the articles right away and clarifying that. So I'm gonna make that a little bit harder for him to connect the dots here. Okay, so I'm gonna make him actually not just drop on it, but actually go up to it and lay down on it. So he's gonna actually run to the article and submit to it. So it tells me that when he comes up to something, it's on the ground already, he's gonna submit to it. So that's gonna connect the pieces here. And now, what I'm gonna be doing here is creating a little bit more have to. So as soon as his nose comes to the article and touches that article, right away, I'm gonna create a little bit more oomph to the position. So he's gonna learn to have to, when he comes to the article, he's got to have to beat that feeling. So that's where the have to comes in. So as soon as he comes to an article, I want him to learn. As soon as his nose and he indicates that article, he has to lay down immediately on it and indicate it to me. So that's the next step here on this. This should probably take another couple of days, and then we won't harp on this too much more. We're gonna go into teaching the puppies how to hunt now. But right now, we wanna get everything, kind of all the ducks in a row first, before we actually start separating each behavior and start putting length and distance and discipline to the behaviors and clarifying the rules of each behavior. But right now we kind of put everything in pieces. So by the time he finishes his methodical piece, his lose your turn piece, his follow source piece, and his article piece, how to indicate and how to restart off of articles, then all the pieces of tracking is pretty much in place. So that at that point, we can start really isolating each part and perfecting it. I have the puppy submit to the article, I instantly step on the leash and hold the puppy in place there so I don't have to fight that. Because right now the puppy doesn't know how to stay in place. It does not understand the job that in that position it's supposed to stay in there until it's released from a command or from a stimulated motivation pop to go. So I put my foot on the leash there and hold them there so that way I can get my food, I can do what I need to do without them squirming all over the place and fighting back. Okay, so you see today I changed a little something with the article with them because everything is subject for advancement. So today, the beginning steps, I dropped the article, I see he's submitting to it really nicely. So now I want him to actually follow and submit to the article. Okay, so when he comes up to the article on the track, he has to understand that he can come up to it and submit to it. So I teach him that in the foundation work. So now you see me taking the article, and when he submits to it, I reward him for it, and I take it and I throw it out, and I encourage him to it. And I keep playing this game with him now that when he follows the article and submits to it. Okay, it's going to make the connection a lot easier for him when we start the process of him actually having to go to each article. So he knows when he goes to the article and then and he confronts the article, he submits to it in motion. Okay, it's one thing because it's a whole other behavior to submit to something in motion versus submit to something stationary. This is an easy concept for the dog once they get it because there's only one behavior. Here you're asking them to do two behaviors. You're asking them to follow something and also submit to something. So that's two different behaviors. So it's a little harder. So you want to bring that into play as soon as possible. As soon as you see you have this behavior where they submit to it, don't stay there too long because they're not going to know how to go and submit to an article. They're just going to know how to drop on an article. Okay, so this is a very important thing. That's why I bring it into the process very quickly. So I don't develop the bad habits of just being able to drop to an article. Because the reality of it is that anytime a dog goes up to an article in a trial, they're going to it to submit to it. They're finding it. Okay, so they're in motion. We want to teach them from the very beginning to submit to articles with motion. Now you see the same process with the tracking now. The conditions here are a little bit harder for the puppy because you really can't see the footsteps, so he really has to use his nose, but there's food there, so he's still finding food. But the same process, we're still doing footstep to footstep to footstep to footstep, okay, and making the drag into direct source, back into footstep to footstep to footstep. Once the article process is done, we're going to change this process. We're going to reverse it, meaning we're going to start teaching the puppy how to hunt for the food. That means there's not going to be food in every footstep. Okay, but then we're going to teach them how to take a turn. That's where they're going to actually keep their methodical behavior going through the turns versus through the straights because we want to get them hunting. Once the article process is done, we're going to change this process. We're going to reverse it, meaning we're going to start teaching the puppy how to hunt for the food. That means there's not going to be food in every footstep. Okay? But then we're going to teach them how to take a turn. That's where they're going to actually keep their methodical behavior going through the turns versus through the straights, because we want to get them hunting as soon as possible. We have to, here when we're doing this, we have food in every footstep, but we still have the reality and the quality of the source, that pure source that they're following. You don't ever want to lose that once you get it, because that's the end, at the end of the day, that's what you want your dog to concentrate on, is direct source, not food. So we want to keep that in play, but by keeping that in play, we still have to teach the proper behaviors. It have to take some more time to teach the proper behaviors to track. Okay? We taught them what to track, now we have to teach them how to track properly. Okay? So that's why it's very important. But once we take this process out of the picture here, so once they start learning how to hunt for the food, that means they're going to start picking up the footsteps, because he already has the behavior pretty much solid in his brain to go to footstep to footstep to footstep. So we're going to take this now and turn this into just a regular footstep around, but this now is going to be baited. Okay, so it's going to be food, 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 food. And what we want the puppies or the dogs to learn how to do is how to take a turn, not find it. Okay, there's a difference between taking a turn and finding a turn. When a dog takes a turn, the behavior stays the same. That means he's methodical through the turn. He's not coming up to the turn and just finding it and then directing himself down the turn. He actually goes around the turn just like it's a straight, methodically. Okay, that's the key. And what this causes the dogs and the puppies to do in the beginning stage of the foundation work, it causes them not to ever learn to pick up speed around the turns, because they're taking the turn, they're not finding it. Dogs that find turns are the ones that pick up the speed. Dogs that take the turn, take it methodically and take it calm, because they're on direct source, and then the behavior goes right through the turn. a little bit more of the have to, meaning that I made it more of a job than a game. So now I'm taking the article, if you see my setup, I'm taking the articles now and I'm throwing out there and I'm purposely making sure he understands that it's a have to. You have to submit to the article. It's no longer a want to. So once I clarify that I have to, and I do it in the setup before I do it out there on the track, because I want to make sure they have a clear understanding what a have to is, so they don't freak out or stress out by it. So you see the track started out pretty much the same, footstep to footstep track, and every footstep. You know, it's a very windy day today, and this is the secret of dogs learning to track direct source. This is what we're kind of trying to educate people. Direct source never moves. So no matter how windy it is out, it will not affect the dog that can track direct source. Wind only affects dogs that track overall source. And that's why in our foundation work with tracking, we want to make sure that our dogs learn to track direct source. So we're not worried about conditions. Okay, so we started off footstep to footstep. He's doing really good here. Now if you notice today, I let him go a little bit further ahead of me to get me out of the picture a little bit. And I'm also creating the footsteps where it's a have to now. I'm not guiding anymore, I'm correcting now. Okay, so that means I'm gonna allow him to overshoot a footstep. And when he overshoots it, I'm gonna correct him for overshooting it. So now it becomes a have to. And if you notice how his attitude changed when I started doing that, he started getting a lot calmer, he started slowing down by himself, because now I am making him responsible for the job. So every footstep has value. So now I'm going down here, and I'm giving him space and letting him walk up ahead of me, and capitalizing, and again, allowing him to overshoot the footstep. So as soon as he overshoots the footstep, he wants to go to the other footstep, I give him a good pop there, and clarify, this footstep first, then the next footstep after. Okay? So, as I come up here to the turns again, it's the same thing, taking direct source into footsteps again. So the only difference between this one is I just started creating the have-tos for the behaviors now. Before it was all want-tos, and it was more like a fun game for them, but now that game becomes a job, because that's where the have-tos come to play. So it's the same, pretty much the same type of track I'm doing, but like I said, I create a have-to in it. Okay, and that's what's going to make the dog really responsible now, and make this something where it's not just a fun game anymore, but it's a job that they have to do. And as you see, when I come up to the, once he finishes all this, and I come up to the article stretch of this, now I just combine them all together. I don't do it separately anymore, because they don't need it now. So now I come up to this, and I'm clarifying the have to. Now, when you get to that article, you have to beat me to it. That means you have to beat the have to. Okay, so you have to submit before I submit you. So that's what the have to is. So I am giving them the opportunity to keep going, and as soon as he knows it's the article, you start seeing now, just submit to me. Okay, so pretty much every one he's submitted by himself to. So now, the next step is now we got all the pieces in play. We got him understanding pretty much all the pieces of track, all the behaviors. Now, this leg, this track now is going to start going into a hunt. That means that there's not going to be food in every footstep anymore. He's going to have to start hunting for the food. That means footstep to footstep to footstep, and every so often he's going to find some food. But he has to now learn, because as you can see, he's starting to do the behavior by himself, the methodical behavior. So as soon as he starts being able to do that, I don't want him to depend on food as the source anymore. I want him to depend on the crushed vegetation, the disturbance of the earth as the source. So I'm going to start taking up food now. And so now when he comes up to these turns now, these are no longer going to be drags. Now we're going to teach him how to take a turn. So it's going to be hunt, and probably about 5 paces to maybe 8 paces before the turn, I start a food trail. Okay, because I want him to blend into the turn. I don't want him to just kind of go up and back up and do his skills. I want him to actually not even think about it. I want him to just go into a methodical right around the turn. That's how you teach those how to take a turn. Okay, so you don't start it on the turn, you start it before the turn, so you want him to go right into a blend. Okay, so you want footstep to footstep to footstep to footstep to footstep. And again, when he comes around the turn and he starts learning how to take the turn with footsteps, then I'll filter it off to another hunt again. This will only happen now on turns now, that he's going to get food in every footstep around the turns, because now we're going to teach him how to take a turn. Before, what we were doing, we were teaching him how to stay on source and how to lose a turn. That's why these lines were this way. If he overshot, he would come back and follow source. Okay? That's him finding source. Okay, finding and following source. Here, we're going to teach them how to take source. Okay, so that's the difference. So when they learn how to take source, like I was explaining before in the previous explanation, when they're learning how to take source, you'll see no change of behaviors. They'll track the turn, the same behavior that they track the straight. That's how you know you did a good job. Okay?
First hunt track. Sigh. First, take your turn. Footstep tracking. Approximately 16 weeks old. Sai is doing a great job of checking each footstep, even the ones without food in them. You can see Fabian getting further behind him each day and that the lines are getting looser. This means that the puppy is controlling his own speed and showing true methodical behavior. In 10 training days, Cy has all the skills to lose a turn, take a turn, track direct source, he knows how to track methodically, he has articles in place, he has restarts, he is conditioned to motivated stimulation, and he has have-tos in place. At 4 months of age, he is tracking at the level of dogs who have been tracking for 8 months to a year. This is what makes this program so special.
So now what you see here is that we're changing and advancing now. Okay, now we're actually adding a hunt. So I started with a methodical first, and then I filtered into a hunt. Now today's hunt for the first time was 2 to 3 paces without food. Wow. Okay, so now that he's hunting source now, this is where the methodical comes back into play around the corners, because now we're trying to teach him how to take a turn. So he hunts all the way up to maybe 5 to 6 paces before the corner, and it goes back into methodical all the way around the corner to learn his methodical behavior, how to take a turn. Okay, so now what we're looking for here is we're looking for this blend of him being able to just go in a nice fluid manner around this turn like it's not even there. So we want it to be fluid. We want to teach him the good behaviors from the very beginning and how to take a turn and take them nice and calmly. Okay, so once he takes the turn, I filter it off back into a hunt again, a small little hunt, back into find your turn again. Okay, so it becomes methodical again around the turn, and then back into a filtered hunt again. And so that's the process throughout the entire track. In the beginning stages, remember, it was the turns had source taking them, and it was more about teaching them how to stay on source and follow source. This is teaching them how to stay on source and be consistent on source. Okay, that's the key. We teach them this behavior in the beginning, how to lose a turn, because eventually they will. So we want to know that they understand when they lose a turn how to find it again very quickly with minimum point loss. But at the end of the day, we don't really want them to lose a turn. We want them to be able to take the turn and get full points. But just in case of that rare incident that your dog does lose a turn, he's covered. So as I'm going through this process, like I said, this track is the exact same track throughout. Hunt into teaching the dog how to take a turn, methodical around the turn. Okay, so now when we get up to the process where it's articles, now it's no longer a straight drag to an article. It's footstep to footstep to footstep to footstep to footstep. But here we keep it methodical to the article because we don't want to teach how to race the articles. So we want still every footstep important until the article appears. Because if you start just doing articles after articles after articles and the reward's only the articles, they lose their connection to source, and they're just looking for articles to get rewarded. So that's why in the beginning stages you always want to do methodical up to the article, so they develop that great habit of staying methodical, direct source to article. Okay, so now when we get up to the articles, is this something where I change a little bit? Okay, so as he's going footstep to footstep, when the next footstep that he gets to, it's going to be actually a little drag with no food in it. So I want him to take this piece of food, get this set here, go up to the article, and lay down. It gives him a chance to think and problem solve. Instead, because remember, if he's going like this, right into here, and he comes to an article, he's not going to be sure what to do because remember, he's used to getting food in these footsteps. So when he goes there and there's no food, he's going to be thinking, he's going to be overthinking it, and he may not want to lay down right away. That will come in time once he realizes when he comes to an article that he lays down and gets rewarded. So this starts off with a little drag. So he hits his nose over here, there's no food, he follows source, and then he commits to the article. Okay, this just gives them a little chance to think and problem solve right here for the article. And then we go right back into footstep, the footstep, the footstep, the footstep, then another article, a little drag out, put the article out there. So he comes here, gets source, goes to the article, and relaxes. So give him that nice chance to be able to be clear of what that job is all about without confusing him. Right, then goes back into footstep, the footstep, the footstep, the footstep, keeping it methodical up to the article, and consistently throughout. And now you can see this puppy is very advanced very quickly because all the right information was given at the right time.
We hope you enjoyed our Fast Track series, The Foundation. In the next episodes, we will be advancing our dog's hunting abilities. We will be adding skills into each track and teach you how to test your dogs on a regular basis as a guide to where your dog is in tracking. Fabian is available for phone consultations, virtual coaching, private lessons, and seminars. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.